If you don't want to move into a nursing home, then pack your things and get out of my house." Those were the words my son shouted while looking straight into my eyes. I stayed silent, only managing a faint smile. I folded my clothes carefully, tucked away the old photographs, and closed my suitcase. An hour later, a black limousine stopped in front of the house. When my son opened the door and saw who had come to pick me up, the smile vanished from his face. It was as if the ground had fallen from under his feet. That feeling when you look at the child you once held, once nursed, once taught to walk, and realize you no longer recognize the person standing before you. That's exactly what I felt when my son, David, threw me out of the house. No, to be precise, out of my own house. That house was bought with the money I saved over 32 years, sewing wedding dresses for other women. Every stitch carried my sweat, every piece of lace paid for a brick in that house, but that Sunday afternoon in March, none of that mattered anymore. I was washing the dishes after lunch, as always, because according to Emily, my daughter-in-law, I was better in the kitchen. The front of my floral dress was damp, my calloused hands trembling slightly as I held the sponge. David walked in, wearing that same frown I'd seen since he was little, and got scolded by his father. But my husband, Albert, had been gone for 13 years, and the 42-year-old man standing before me was no longer that boy. "Mom, we need to talk." I dried my hands on an embroidered kitchen towel made by an old friend, turned around and gave a tired smile. "What is it, dear?" Emily stepped in red nails, sleek hair, dark red lipstick. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe like someone waiting for a show to start. "We've decided," David said, avoiding my eyes. "This house feels a bit cramped. The kids need more space, and you're getting older. Maybe it's time you found a place that fits you better." My heart thudded hard. I knew what was coming. "A place that fits me better?" I repeated slowly. "You mean a nursing home?" "Mom, there are some really nice ones nearby. They have friends, activities, nurses to take care of you." "A nursing home," I cut him off. The word shot out like a bullet. "You're trying to send me to a nursing home?" The silence in the kitchen grew heavy. Emily pretended to scroll through her phone. Finally, David looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before: coldness. "Not a nursing home, Mom. An upscale assisted living community. The only difference," I said evenly, "is that you're trying to get rid of me." My voice didn't tremble. "I wouldn't let them see that." David shouted, "Then go. If you don't want to move into a nursing home, pack your bags and leave my house." His yell echoed through the kitchen, bounced off the walls I had painted, through the hallway where I hung pictures, and up the staircase I had cleaned every day for 3 years. Emily tried to hide her smirk behind her hand, but I saw it. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not my heart, it had shattered long ago. It was the final thread that connected me to the illusion that I still had a family. I took a deep breath, looked at the son I no longer recognized, and did the last thing he expected. I smiled. "All right, David. I'll pack my things." His face shifted, confusion mixed with fear. He had expected tears, pleading, some kind of scene, but no, there was only a chilling calm. I walked upstairs to the small room at the back of the house where I slept, a space so tiny it looked like a storage closet. I took out my old leather suitcase, the same one I'd brought with me 3 years ago when I moved in. I folded my clothes neatly, every blouse, every dress, every scarf I'd sewn myself. I took out a small wooden box filled with photographs, Albert and me on our wedding day, David as a baby in my arms, my mother standing in the backyard of the house where I grew up. I didn't shed a single tear. An hour later, I carried the suitcase downstairs. David sat on the couch I had bought, Emily beside him with that triumphant expression. When the doorbell rang, David got up with an annoyed sigh and opened the door, and his face, I will never forget. A sleek black limousine waited outside. The driver, wearing a suit, opened the back door, and out stepped a man in his 70s, silver hair neatly combed, dressed in a deep navy suit. It was Henry Montgomery, Albert's former business partner and the owner of Montgomery Holdings, the wealthiest man in the neighborhood. And he had come for me. David froze, mouth open. Emily turned pale. Henry walked in, heading straight toward me, as if my son didn't exist. "Catherine," he said warmly, smiling, "are you ready?" I picked up my suitcase and gave David a last look. "Thank you for everything, David. The house is all yours now." I stepped outside. The smile on his face vanished completely. Through the limousine's rear window, I saw him still standing motionless on the porch, watching his mother leave in elegance, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt free. Inside, the faint scent of genuine leather and expensive cologne filled the air. Henry sat beside me, keeping a respectful distance as the car glided down the main avenue. I held tightly to the suitcase handle as if it were the only real thing left. My hands trembled not from fear, but from a strange mix of relief and disbelief. "Catherine, are you all right?" Henry asked softly. I wanted to say, "I'm fine," to pretend I was in control, but what came out was a weary sigh. "I don't even know how I feel, Henry. It's all too new." He nodded without speaking. We sat quietly, watching the city drift by cars, billboards, pedestrians, the world moving on, as if my life hadn't just collapsed. When we reached his building, a luxurious glass tower downtown, I needed Henry's arm to help me step out. The security guards bowed respectfully. He smiled back, while I remained invisible to them, just a woman beside him. The mirrored elevator reflected a 68-year-old woman in a simple dress, gray hair tied back neatly, eyes swollen from holding back tears. "You still look beautiful, Catherine," Henry said gently, as if reading my thoughts. "You always have." I wanted to laugh, to tell him he must be seeing things, but the sincerity in his eyes silenced me. His apartment was on the 23rd floor, a penthouse overlooking the city. When the doors opened, I stopped in awe. Marble floors, high ceilings, sunlight flooding through glass walls, the decor elegant yet warm. "Your room is upstairs," Henry said, carrying my suitcase. "You have your own bathroom, closet, and balcony. Make yourself at home, this is your house. Now." My house now. Those words echoed in my head as I climbed the polished wooden stairs. The bedroom was twice the size of the one I'd had at David's. A king-size bed covered in crisp white sheets. Golden sunlight filtered through linen curtains. The air smelled fresh, like a new beginning. I sat on the edge of the bed, and the tears finally came. Not from sadness, but from exhaustion, from years of pent-up pain finally released. I didn't know how long I cried. When I looked up, the city was glowing under the night lights. My phone vibrated non-stop, David calling. I let it ring until it stopped. Then again, I declined. Notifications flooded in 47 missed calls, 23 messages. I opened them. "Mom, where are you? Please answer. Who was that man? Can we talk? Mom, I'm worried." I laughed quietly. "Worried about me?" After throwing me out of my own kitchen, I turned off the phone. A soft knock came at the door. "Catherine." I made "some tea," Henry said, walking in with a silver tray, a teapot, and a few cookies. He sat by the window, pouring tea without a word. The scent of chamomile and melissa filled the room, my favorite blend. "How did you know?" I asked. "Albert told me," he said gently. "He said you always drank it before bed." The mention of Albert made my heart ache. Albert Montgomery, the man I loved more than life itself, who had died of a heart attack 13 years ago. "Why did you come for me today, Henry? How did you even know?" He paused. "I didn't know. Pure coincidence. I happened to drive by and saw your grandson playing in the yard. I thought of stopping to say hello, but something told me to come back later. When I saw you walking out with that suitcase and the look on your son's face, I understood everything." "He threw me out," I said, my voice flat. "My own son." Henry set his cup down, fingers intertwined. "Catherine, I need to tell you something. But first, there's something I've kept to myself for many years." My heart started racing. His eyes carried both peace and sorrow. "I've always loved you," he said quietly. The silence afterward was so deep I could hear my own breathing. From the day Albert introduced you as his fiancée, you were 23, wearing that yellow dress with little flowers. Your smile lit up the whole room. I knew I had missed the one chance of my life. I didn't know what to say. My mind went blank. Henry's voice grew softer but steadier. Albert was my best friend, and you loved him. So I kept my feelings to myself, turned them into respect, into friendship. I married Laura, had children, built my life. But Catherine... He stopped, his voice catching. You've always been the only one in my heart. Tears fell again. I didn't even know why, maybe confusion, or because, for the first time in so long, someone truly saw me. Not as a burdened mother, but as a person, with worth. Laura passed away 5 years ago, he continued. I honored my mourning, waited until I could, but I never found the courage to look for you. Henry stood, stepped closer, then knelt before me, a 73-year-old billionaire, kneeling before a woman like me. But today, when I saw you leaving that house with the grace of a queen, I knew I couldn't lose you again. Henry, He gently stopped me. You don't have to say anything. Just know that you're not alone anymore. You'll never be alone again. He kissed my forehead, a promise in the form of a touch, then quietly left the room. I sat there, staring at the glittering city beyond the glass, holding a cup of tea gone cold. For the first time in decades, I felt truly seen. The next morning, Henry knocked on my door. Put on something nice, he said with a mysterious smile. We have an important appointment. What kind of appointment? Trust me. An hour later, we arrived at his attorney's office, a sleek glass building downtown. His lawyer, Dr. Oliver Sampson, a bald man with glasses, shook my hand with unusual respect. Mrs. Catherine, it's an honor to meet you. Henry pulled out a chair for me and sat beside me. Oliver, go ahead. The lawyer opened a blue folder, took out several papers, and looked directly at me. Mrs. Catherine, Mr. Montgomery has an offer for you. He wishes to grant you minority ownership shares in 3 of Montgomery Holdings projects. This would provide you with an estimated monthly income of about $100,000, depending on quarterly results. I blinked several times, stunned. I'm sorry. What did you say? Henry smiled. You'll never have to depend on anyone again. Not on me, not on an ungrateful son. Not on anyone. At that moment, I understood. My life had changed completely. David kept calling. 47 calls turned into 200, but I never answered. Because some doors, once closed, should stay closed. At least for now. But what David didn't know was that the limousine that day wasn't the biggest surprise. His real nightmare was only just beginning. The next morning, I woke up in Henry's penthouse. It felt strange, like waking up in a foreign place, taking a few seconds to remember where I was. I opened my eyes to the high ceiling, the linen curtains swaying in the breeze. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but I wasn't. I sat up slowly, my knees cracking the price of age. I stepped onto the balcony and looked down at the city below. From up here, New York looked completely different, cleaner, brighter, calmer. No longer the dull view from the tiny room in David's house, where all I could see was a gray wall and a rusty water tank. A cold wave washed over me. I had ignored too many things, overlooked too many signs, swallowed countless small cruelties just to keep the peace. I sat in the swinging chair on the faded balcony and let the memories flood back. 3 years ago, I had sold my small apartment, 2 bedrooms, paid for with years of sewing wedding dresses. Every square foot had been earned with sweat and needlework. David had come over one Saturday afternoon with Emily, and that charming smile. Mom, it must be lonely living alone. What if something happens? You're not getting any younger. Age, that word they used like a sentence. I'm fine, dear. I have friends, my own routines. Emily chimed in, sweet as syrup. Our house is big, the kids adore you, and we'll take great care of you. Care, it sounded comforting, but it was a lie wrapped in kindness. David scratched his head, looking awkward like he used to as a boy. Actually, we're thinking of opening another store branch, but we're short on funds. If you sold your apartment and invested with us, it would be like a family partnership, so I sold it. I sold the apartment for about $180,000 and handed everything to my son, believing I was investing in his future, in our family's future. 3 years passed, and I never saw a single penny back. The memories came layer after layer, loss upon loss. My grandmother Clarice's jewelry vanished. A pearl brooch, a gold ring with an amethyst, and an amber necklace. Not expensive, but priceless heirlooms from when she fled Europe during the war. I had hidden them in a small blue velvet box inside my dresser drawer. Then one day, the box was gone. "Maybe you put it somewhere else and forgot," David said, his eyes still fixed on his phone. I didn't forget. I knew exactly where I'd left it. Emily stood at the door, smiling faintly. "Mother-in-law, honestly, at your age, forgetting things is normal." My grandma was the same way right before she moved into the nursing home. The nursing home, she had been planting that idea for a long time. I never saw those pieces of jewelry again. 6 months later, I saw a photo of Emily vacationing in Cancun, wearing a bracelet identical to mine. When I asked her about it, she laughed. "Oh, I bought it at a craft market in Mexico." I didn't react. I didn't make a scene. I swallowed my tears and pretended to believe her because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my son. Afraid of being alone. Afraid to admit that I had raised a man too weak to defend his own mother. But the worst memory was from a summer night 8 months ago. I went downstairs to get a glass of water and heard Emily's voice in the living room. "Mom, just a few more months and she'll be in that nursing home. I'll turn her room into my walk-in closet." She laughed. "No, she suspects nothing. She's so naive. Still thinks her son loves her." I froze on the staircase, gripping the railing to keep from collapsing. "We've already spent most of the money from selling her apartment," she went on. "But don't worry, once she's gone, we'll sell this house, buy a smaller one, and still have plenty left. David, he just does whatever I say. Weak men are easy to control." I went back to my room and cried until my pillow was soaked, yet I still did nothing. Because deep down, I kept hoping David would realize, would stand up for his mother. Foolish me. The months that followed were pure humiliation. Emily treated me like hired help. "Mother-in-law, since you're not working anymore, let me focus on my career. You can take care of the house, okay?" Fair trade. So I cleaned, cooked, did laundry, babysat, made lunch for 8 people every Sunday when her family came over. In return, I had a roof over my head, a tiny room, and the illusion that I was still part of the family. "Catherine, reheat Peter's food. Catherine, iron my clothes. Catherine, bathe Alice, I need to go out." Never a single please or thank you. David just sat there, pretending not to notice. One afternoon, my grandson Peter, 8 years old, brought home a drawing of his family. His dad, mom, little sister, and a small figure in the corner. "Who's this?" I asked. "That's you, right? The teacher said to draw our family, but Mom said you're not really part of it, just staying here for now." His words cut straight through my chest. "And what do you think, sweetheart?" I asked softly. He smiled innocently. "I think you are family. You make chocolate cake every Friday." It was the sweetest and most painful thing I'd ever heard. Sitting now on the penthouse balcony, I could remember every humiliation, every tear I swallowed. And then I realized something inside me had changed. It wasn't anger or sadness, it was clarity. For 3 years, I had accepted crumbs of affection, erased myself just to stay, slowly disappearing under the fear of being thrown out. And in the end, they still threw me out. Because to someone like Emily, I would never be enough, just a burden to get rid of. And David, my son, had chosen his side long ago. I had simply been blind, clinging to the memory of the little boy he once was, refusing to see the coward he had become. I picked up my phone. 213 missed calls. The messages kept coming. "Mom, please answer. Mom, we need to talk. I didn't mean what I said. Didn't mean it, but he said it. He shouted it. He threw me out like trash." I blocked his number. Henry knocked and came in carrying a breakfast tray, toast, butter, strawberry jam, and a glass of fresh orange juice. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in 3 years," I replied. And it was true. He sat down, studying me carefully. "You look different from yesterday." "I'm remembering," I said slowly. "All the times I stayed silent when I should have spoken up." Henry nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "What do you plan to do now?" I looked at him. Then out at the vast cityscape I had almost forgotten. "Now I'll do what I should have done long ago." "What's that?" I smiled, not the smile of pain this time, but of resolve. "I'll remember who I am." And when a woman remembers who she truly is, those who once looked down on her will learn a lesson they'll never forget. 2 days later, Henry took me to a massive commercial building downtown. Glass facades gleaming, strict security, the air thick with the scent of power and money from high-end law offices. "Trust me," he said, gently squeezing my hand as we stepped into the elevator. 12th floor. A shiny gold plaque read, "Sampson and Associates, Corporate Law." Attorney Oliver was waiting for us in a spacious conference room with a walnut table, leather chairs, and shelves full of law books that looked more decorative than useful. But what caught my attention wasn't the luxury or the towering shelves, it was the blue folder on the table. On it, written neatly, was a name, Albert Montgomery. My heart stopped. "Mrs. Catherine, please have a seat," Oliver said, motioning toward the chair across from him. I sat down, my legs almost giving out. Henry sat beside me, still holding my hand. That touch was the only thing keeping me grounded. Oliver opened the folder. A stack of documents, seals, signatures, certificates. "Before we begin," he said, looking at me over his glasses, "I need to ask, did you know that your late husband was a co-founder of Montgomery Holdings?" "I did," I answered. "Albert and Henry started that company together back in the 90s. And did you know that when he passed away, his shares were supposed to be divided among the legal heirs?" "Yes. My son David told me everything belonged to him. At least, that's what he said." Henry and Oliver exchanged a look, the kind of look that precedes a devastating truth. "Mrs. Catherine," Oliver said, pulling out another folder, "your son lied to you." The world around me seemed to stop. "What do you mean?" I gasped. "Albert left a notarized will. 40% of the shares belong to you, 40% to David, and 20% to the charitable foundation he created." He pushed a document toward me. "Here it has the date, signature, and official certification, drafted 3 months before he passed away." My hands trembled as I picked it up. Albert's signature bold and clear, and next to it, my name, 40%. But David said the lawyer advised that since I didn't understand business, it was better if everything was under his name. "I signed a power of attorney." "You signed for him to manage it," Oliver corrected firmly. "Not to steal it. Those are 2 very different things. You're still the legal owner of 40%. My head spun too much information, too much anger, too much betrayal. Henry's jaw tightened. "There's more," he said. 2 years ago, David sold all the company's shares to an investment group. He forged your signature and kept all the money." My throat tightened. "How much?" Oliver glanced at another document. "The company was valued at about $4,200,000. Your 40% equals $1,680,000. Including interest, valuation adjustments, and emotional damages, the total now is roughly $2,300,000. $2,300,000. While I was being thrown out of my own house, sleeping in a cramped room, humiliated every day, my son sat atop that money. "I want to sue," I said, my voice steady. "I want every cent back with interest, penalties, and justice." Oliver smiled the smile of a lawyer who knows he's about to win. "The lawsuit is ready. It just needs your signature." I took the pen and signed 3 copies, each stroke a declaration of war. "David will be notified within 48 hours, Oliver said. "He'll have 15 days to respond, but, with this evidence, fake signatures, bank records, original documents, he has no way out." As we left the office, my mind was spinning, but inside my chest was a new feeling, power. On the way back, Henry stopped at a cafe and ordered 2 espressos. He looked at me seriously. "Catherine, are you sure? Suing your own son won't be easy. He'll fight back. Emily will keep poisoning him. And your grandkids," I interrupted. "My grandchildren need to grow up knowing their grandmother wasn't someone to be trampled on. That self-respect is not for sale. And that stealing from your own mother comes with consequences." Henry smiled, pride flickering in his eyes. Now that's the Catherine I know. That night, I turned off my phone over 400 missed calls and slept the deepest sleep I'd had in years. No guilt, no fear, no regret. 2 days later, Henry's landline rang at 7 a.m. It was Oliver. He's been served. From his reaction, I'd say today is the worst day of your son's life. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was rising over New York's skyline. And me? I was just getting started. David thought he was clever, that I'd never find out. But he forgot one thing: I'm the daughter of Italian immigrants. And Italians, when betrayed, take back everything. 3 weeks passed since the court issued the summons, 3 weeks of complete silence from me, 3 weeks in which David probably aged 10 years. I knew, because Henry had hired a private investigator not out of revenge, but as strategy. Knowing your enemy is half the battle. And yes, my son had now become my enemy. That Saturday morning, I decided it was time to look him in the eye. Not out of nostalgia, not for reconciliation, but because some conversations must be had face to face. I turned my phone back on after weeks of silence. He picked up immediately. "Mom, thank God. We need to talk. This is a huge misunderstanding, I can explain. Grant's restaurant. Tonight, 8 p.m. You and Emily. Don't be late." I hung up before he could reply. Henry, lounging in his armchair with a cup of coffee, chuckled. "You're magnificent when you're in control." "I learned from the best," I said, winking at him. By 7:30, I was ready. I chose a black knee-length dress, the one I had sewn for myself years ago but never dared to wear. Low heels, hair loose over my shoulders, a few silver strands shining under the light, lips painted deep red. When I came downstairs, Henry stood up abruptly, astonished. "Catherine, you look stunning." I smiled lightly. Revenge is best served cold, but one can still look beautiful while enjoying it. We arrived at Grant's at exactly 8 p.m. The restaurant was elegant crystal chandeliers, crisp white tablecloths, waiters in gloves, the kind of place where a single dinner cost as much as a week's worth of sewing work back in the day. David and Emily were already seated in the corner, both looking uneasy. When they saw me, their faces changed. David went pale, Emily's eyes widened. I was no longer the old woman in a floral dress soaked with dishwater. I was myself again, the woman they had forgotten existed. I walked toward them, feeling every gaze follow me. Maybe it was my imagination, but I felt like a queen. "Mom." David jumped up, trying to hug me. I sidestepped him and sat down across from them, crossing my legs and signaling the waiter. "A glass of red wine, please. Thank you." The air was thick with tension. Emily fidgeted with her napkin. David looked around, avoiding my eyes. "You two look quite polished," I said casually. "Emily, new dress, isn't it? And you, David, that's a Tag Heuer watch, right?" "Very nice." David swallowed hard. "Mom, about the lawsuit." "Oh, the lawsuit," I interrupted, smiling. "Yes, we should talk about that." I opened my purse, pulled out a brown envelope, and set it in the middle of the table. "I want you both to see this." Emily eyed the envelope as if it were a ticking bomb. "What's that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Open it and see." David tore it open with trembling hands. The color drained from his face. Inside were copies of forged documents, my falsified signature, and bank statements showing $1,680,000 transferred into his account 2 years ago. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "Your father was a careful man, David. He kept copies of everything in a safe. When he died, he left me the key. A lie, but they didn't need to know that. I just never thought I'd use them against my own son." Mom, I can explain. Then go ahead, I said coldly. Explain why you forged your mother's signature, why you stole nearly $2 million from me, why you let me sleep in a storage-sized room while you spent my money on Swiss watches and luxury restaurants. The waiter brought the wine. I took a long sip, the bitter taste spreading across my tongue, sweeter than anything I had ever tasted. Emily tried to regain her composure. Mother-in-law, we didn't mean. I turned to her, my stare making her step back. Be quiet. You have no right to speak to me. You're the one who stole my grandmother's jewelry, turned me into a maid in my own home, and planned to throw me into a nursing home so you could turn my room into your closet. Emily went pale. How did you— Houses have ears, and you talk way too loud on the phone. David buried his face in his hands. Mom, this is all my fault. Emily has nothing to do with it. Good, I said, leaning forward. Then admit it. Admit you stole my money, threw me out of my own house, and screamed at me like an animal. Tears rolled down his face, but I felt no pity. I don't know what happened to you anymore. David. The boy I raised is gone. All that's left is a coward who chose money over his mother. Mom, I'm sorry. I laughed a dry, empty laugh. You're only sorry because you got caught. Because now you'll have to give everything back, every cent, with interest and damages. I stood up, grabbed my purse. Funny, I once sold my apartment to invest in you $180,000. And while I lived cramped in a tiny room, you sat on nearly $2 million of my money. The company was struggling, Mom. I needed the money. Needed? I raised my voice. A few people turned to look, but I didn't care. Needed it to buy a new car, to vacation in Cancun, to buy designer dresses while your mother washed your clothes and slept in a room without a window? The silence was suffocating. Emily's eyes welled up, but they were tears of rage, not remorse. Your lawyer will deal with mine, I said, stepping back from the table. Either you return what belongs to me, peacefully, or the court will make you, and trust me, it'll hurt a lot more. Mom, wait. I turned one last time. One more thing, David. When I die, and it won't be anytime soon, because now I have a reason to live longer, don't come to my funeral. Don't shed fake tears. Don't pretend to be a devoted son. You had your chance, and you threw it away. I walked out of the restaurant with my head held high. Henry's driver was waiting outside. I got into the car and took a deep breath. Only when the car started moving did my body begin to shake, and a single tear rolled down my cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. Because at last, after all these years, I had said everything. But that dinner was only the beginning. Because once Emily realized she was about to lose everything, her true face emerged. The trap Emily set afterward nearly destroyed me. And believe me, the worst was yet to come. After that dinner, I thought I could finally breathe, that the darkest days were behind me, that all that remained was to wait for justice. I was wrong. A week later, Henry walked into my room with a look I had never seen on him before, a mix of anger and disgust. Catherine, we need to talk. His tone made my stomach twist. That tone never brought good news. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding a brown envelope, avoiding my eyes. The investigator I hired to follow up on the case found something. He paused, then said quietly, "It's about Emily." "What now?" I asked. He opened the envelope. Inside were photographs: Emily entering a hotel, leaving an apartment, and several shots of her kissing a man who was definitely not David. He was younger, muscular, shaved head, wearing a tight tank top, the kind of man who lived in the gym, not at home. "Who is he?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. "Ethan Carter, 32 years old, fitness trainer, works at a gym downtown," Henry said, flipping through more pictures. "They've been seeing each other for at least a year, 2 to 3 times a week, always at the same hotel off the highway." A strange wave of satisfaction rose in me. So, the perfect wife had her own dirty secrets. "Anything else?" I asked. Henry nodded, pulling out several bank statements. "Remember your mother's jewelry, the pieces that went missing?" They were sold at a downtown jewelry store. $23,000. The money was transferred into a joint account Emily secretly opened with this man. I froze. $23,000, my grandmother Clarice's heirlooms, priceless keepsakes sold to fund her affair. And this, he said, handing me one last paper. Plane tickets to Cancun, booked last year under the names Emily and Ethan. A 7-day stay at a 5-star hotel, paid for with a credit card tied to David's account. Everything was true. The so-called girls' retreat she had lied about was actually a honeymoon with her lover, funded by money stolen from me. Does David know? I asked. Henry sighed. He does. 6 months ago, the investigator found old messages. David found out, Emily cried, begged for forgiveness, promised to stop, and he accepted it. Accepted it? I couldn't believe it. He's afraid of her, Henry said quietly. Afraid of divorce, of losing the kids, of being alone. So he chose to pretend he didn't know. I walked to the window, staring down at the crowded traffic below. My son, the same man who had stolen from me, was too weak to throw out the woman who betrayed him. Give everything to Oliver, I said coldly. This changes the entire case. Henry frowned. What do you mean? Emily manipulated my son, used him to access family assets, sold my mother's belongings to fund her affair. That's not just infidelity, that's fraud. I want her in prison. Henry gave a sharp smile. I'm already arranging that. 2 days later, I rang the bell of the house that used to be mine. Emily opened the door, forcing a smile filled with hatred. What do you want? I want to speak privately with my son. She was about to object, but David appeared behind her, thin, hollow-eyed. Let her in, Emily. I stepped inside, feeling a wave of unfamiliarity. Everything was the same, the furniture, the paintings, the faint lavender scent, but this place was no longer my home. David led me into his office and shut the door. We looked at each other in silence. He looked frail, slumped, as if he'd aged 10 years. I know about Emily and Ethan, I said bluntly. He froze. His lips parted, then closed again, no words coming out. I know she's been cheating on you. I know you found out and said nothing. I know she sold Grandma Clarice's jewelry to pay for her trip with him. I stepped closer. And I know one more thing. You're a coward. Mom, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, I shouted. She manipulates you, uses you, betrays you, and you still chose to throw your mother out instead of her. David broke down, sobbing. I'm scared, Mom. Scared of losing the kids. Scared of being alone. Scared of living without her. In that moment, I understood. My son wasn't just weak, he was trapped in a toxic relationship so deep he couldn't even see he was a victim. Emily had hollowed him out, turned him into a puppet. Part of me felt pity, but the larger part, the one that had been most deeply wounded, couldn't forgive. David, look at me. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. You have to choose. Either you wake up and realize she's destroying your life, or you'll lose everything: the company, the money, the children, and your mother. He wept harder. I don't want to lose you, Mom. Then do something. Prove it. I stepped back. Because if you keep living like this, you've already lost. I walked out of the room. Emily was standing in the living room, clearly having overheard everything. I passed her without a glance, but stopped at the door. Oh, Emily, I said coldly. I hope you enjoyed those Cancun trips, because your next one will be to prison. Her face drained of color, while I walked out, filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time: real strength. That night, Attorney Oliver called. Catherine, we have a problem. My heart clenched. What kind of problem? Emily just filed for a restraining order against you. She claims you threatened her life in front of witnesses. I froze. She also requested the court to restrict your contact with the children, saying your presence is psychologically harmful to them. The world crashed around me. That's impossible. It's possible, and she did. The hearing is next week. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. Emily had played dirty, very dirty, and for the first time, since leaving that house, I felt true fear. Fear of losing Peter and Alice. fear of never seeing them again, fear that the venomous woman might actually win. But she forgot one thing. You never mess with the grandchildren of an Italian grandmother, because every poison has its antidote. And what I did next turned everything around. That week was the worst since it all began, worse even than the day I was thrown out. I could endure humiliation, betrayal, loss, but being forbidden to see my grandchildren? That was a line no one could cross. For 3 sleepless nights, I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights, thinking of Peter and Alice, their toothy smiles. Alice's sweet Grandma Catherine, the Friday afternoons making chocolate cake together. All of it could be stolen from me because of one lie. On the morning of the hearing, I wore a dark blue suit, hair neatly pinned back, looking every bit the composed, dignified woman I was, not the dangerous old lady Emily painted me to be. Oliver picked me up at 8 a.m. In the car, he reviewed the plan. Stay calm, don't react to provocation, let me handle the talking. He looked at me seriously. And be ready, Emily will lie a lot. The courthouse was an old building downtown, smelling of paper and damp. The hallways were narrow and crowded with murmuring lawyers in suits. At the end of the corridor stood Emily in a modest, knee-length dress, light makeup, hair in a bun, no jewelry, looking like the very picture of a model mother. David stood beside her, head bowed, unable to look at me. The hearing room was small and stifling. The judge, a woman in her 50s with short hair and a stern face, read the file in a dry voice. Restraining order hearing, case number. My heart pounded. Emily's lawyer, a heavy man in a wrinkled suit, stood up. Your Honor, my client has lived in constant fear since Mrs. Catherine threatened her. He opened a folder. There is a witness. Confirming, the defendant said, and I quote, "Your next trip will be to prison." That is a direct threat. The judge looked at me over her glasses. Do you confirm saying that? Oliver stood up. Your Honor, context must be considered. I'm asking the defendant, the judge interrupted. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said it. But it wasn't a threat, it was a legal statement. I kept my voice steady. She sold family assets to fund her affair. That's a crime. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Emily's face flushed red. Liar, she shouted, jumping to her feet. She's making this up to destroy me. Order, the judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Miss Emily. Only I ask questions here, her lawyer continued. Besides the threat, there's also a child welfare concern. The 2 minors, Peter, 8 years old, and Alice, 5 years old, are living in an environment full of tension. Mrs. Catherine often visits unannounced, makes accusatory remarks about their mother, causing emotional distress. I only visited once in an entire month. I burst out, unable to hold back. The judge raised her hand. Mrs. Catherine, please remain silent. She turned back to the lawyer. Go on. Peter has nightmares, he said dramatically. He told his teacher that his mother and grandmother are always fighting, and he doesn't want to lose either of them. Alice has started wetting the bed again, something she hadn't done in 2 years. Therefore, we request that Mrs. Catherine be prohibited from contacting the children until this family matter is resolved. It felt like my soul was being torn out of my body. No seeing my grandchildren. No hugs. No more afternoons baking together. Tears filled my eyes uncontrollably. Oliver immediately stood. Your Honor, this is blatant manipulation. The plaintiff is using the children as weapons to pressure my client in an ongoing multi-million-dollar property dispute. We have evidence that Emily embezzled assets, sold family heirlooms, and used the money for an extramarital affair. That's not within the scope of this hearing. The judge cut him off. We are only addressing the restraining order. But, Your Honor, it's all interconnected. I understand your point, Counselor. She flipped through the file in silence for what felt like forever. Then she spoke quietly. I grant the petition in part. My world collapsed right there. The court declared, Mrs. Catherine is prohibited from approaching the family residence. I held my breath until the judge looked up at me and continued. However, visitation rights with her grandchildren will remain. provided the meetings take place in a neutral location and under supervision once a week. It wasn't the outcome I had hoped for, but at least it wasn't the worst. Emily, on the other hand, wore a triumphant smile, as if even the smallest restriction against me was enough to satisfy her. When I left the courthouse, I was completely drained. Henry was waiting for me outside, and the moment he saw me, he rushed forward and held me tightly. Right there, on the dusty sidewalk of that old courthouse, I broke down in his arms. I cried harder than I had since the day my husband died. I cried for the injustice, for the cruelty, for having to watch my son sit motionless in that courtroom, silent while his wife destroyed his own mother. She won, I sobbed. She managed to separate me from my grandchildren. Henry tightened his embrace and whispered in my ear, "She hasn't won, Catherine. This was just one battle. The real war is still ahead." That night, I couldn't eat or speak. I sat on the balcony, staring into the endless night. Henry tried to comfort me, brought me hot tea, a warm blanket, soft music, but nothing could calm me. Late that evening, he sat beside me and took my hand. "Catherine, look at me," he said. I turned to him, my eyes swollen from crying. "That woman doesn't know who she's dealing with," he said. "She underestimates you, thinks you'll bow down. But she forgot one thing." "What's that?" I asked quietly. He smiled. "That you're the strongest woman I've ever known. You raised a son alone, worked for decades, lost your husband, and still stood tall. This won't be the thing that breaks you." His words sparked a small flame inside me. "Then what do you want me to do?" Henry stood up, walked into his study, and returned with a thick folder. "I want us to stop defending and start fighting back." I opened it, seeing pages of balance sheets, contracts, and financial reports. "David's business is on the brink of bankruptcy," Henry explained. "Poor management, reckless spending, bad investments. In 6 months, he'll owe over $500,000. I looked up. "How do you know that?" He smiled. "Because I quietly bought up his debts, through a few intermediary companies. I'm now his biggest creditor. I can make his company collapse anytime I want." It took me a few seconds to process what he'd just said. "You did this for me?" Henry looked at me for a long time. "I did it because David deserves the consequences, and because now you get to decide his future." I looked down at the documents, at those red numbers, realizing my son's fate was literally in my hands. For the first time in days, I smiled. Emily could play dirty, but she had forgotten Italian grandmothers know how to play too, and when they fight back, they fight to win. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't anger anymore, it was strategy. I drank my coffee and reread Henry's documents. David's company was drowning in debt, unpaid taxes, overdue salaries, unpaid vendors, a disaster. Through shell companies, Henry now controlled over $520,000 of that debt. But amid the paperwork, something didn't feel right. I called Attorney Oliver. "I need a forensic accountant, the best one you know." "For what?" he asked. "I want every dollar of my son's company investigated for the past 3 years, every invoice, every transaction, every expense." "What are you looking for, Catherine?" he asked slowly. "Proof," I said. "Proof of who really caused the company's downfall." Oliver immediately understood. "All right, you'll have a full report in a week." While waiting, I did something I never thought I would. Hired a private investigator who specialized in child welfare. "I want to know how my grandchildren are living," I told the serious-looking man. "Track their routines, meals, school attendance. I suspect she's neglecting them." He nodded, taking detailed notes. "You'll have my report in 10 days. Exactly a week later, Oliver arrived at my home with a thick folder. He looked serious, but there was a spark of satisfaction in his eyes. "Sit down, Catherine. You need to see this." He opened the folder, revealing spreadsheets, charts, and pages marked with yellow notes. "Your son isn't a thief," he said. "David's just incompetent, bad investments, trusting the wrong people. His money's been drained systematically by one person." I held my breath. Emily? Exactly. He pointed to the figures. Over the last 3 years, more than $340,000 disappeared from the company. Unauthorized withdrawals, transfers to fake accounts, payments to non-existent vendors. He flipped to another page. Every trail leads to 3 destinations: a joint account under Emily and her lover Ethan's names, an investment under her mother's name, and a secret apartment purchased solely in hers. I clenched my fists. She hadn't just betrayed my son, she'd ruined him financially, slowly and deliberately. "There's more," Oliver said, handing me another document. "Your grandmother Clarice's jewelry? It wasn't sold for $23,000 like she claimed. It was actually sold for $58,000. She pocketed the difference through a fraudulent deal with the jeweler, who happens to be her cousin." My hands trembled, part fury, part relief. Finally, I had real proof. "What do we do now?" I asked. Oliver gave a cold smile. "Now, we destroy her." The very next day, the investigator brought the report about my grandchildren. Peter had missed 3 days of school that week because his mother forgot to take him. Lunches were fast food, snacks were skipped. Alice had started wetting the bed again, not because she feared me, but because her mother spent hours yelling on the phone, arguing with David late into the night, leaving the kids alone with the TV. There were photos and videos. Peter waiting outside the school gate at 5 p.m., with no one to pick him up. Alice crying at the playground with a sunburn. It was undeniable evidence of neglect. I held those pictures, my hands shaking. "My grandchildren," I whispered. "Is it enough?" I asked Oliver, handing him all the files: financial fraud, child neglect, clear proof. He flipped through the pages, then looked up with a grin. "Catherine, you don't just have enough evidence," he said, slapping the table. "You're holding an arsenal." But one thing still tore at me, David: weak, manipulated, yet still my son. Part of me wanted revenge, but another part wanted to save him. That night, I sat with Henry on the balcony. "I could destroy them both," I said. "I have enough evidence to send Emily to prison, gain custody of the kids, and bankrupt David. But," I looked down, "he's still my son." Henry took my hand. "So what will you do?" I took a deep breath. "I'll give him one last chance. One. But on my terms." I turned to Henry. "I'll offer a deal. I'll erase the $520,000 debt if he does 3 things: divorce Emily immediately, attend therapy with me and the kids, and repay all the $1,600,000 he stole, even in installments. If he refuses," my voice turned to steel, "then I'll end it for both of them. Emily will go to prison, David will lose everything, and I'll take custody of Peter and Alice." Henry looked at me with admiration. "Catherine, you're not just strong, you're brilliant." The next day, Oliver drafted the agreement terms, witnesses, notarization, everything. This would be David's final chance to prove he had any decency left. The meeting was set for Tuesday morning at Oliver's office, a neutral place, with lawyers, a therapist, and 2 official witnesses. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a simple gray dress, hair neatly pinned, no jewelry. I wanted to look like myself, calm, steady, unshakable. Henry sat beside me. Oliver reviewed the documents. Forensic accountant Paul prepared his laptop, and 2 court witnesses stood ready. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened. David walked in first, thin, suit hanging loose, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had lost everything. Emily followed, wearing a tight red dress, high heels, makeup thick enough to hide her fear. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by dread. Their lawyer, the same heavy-set man in the wrinkled suit, came in last. "Good morning," Oliver began, his tone cold and firm. "Thank you all for coming. This meeting is for reconciliation, but everything will be recorded and may be used in court." Emily opened her mouth to protest, but her lawyer stopped her. "Please proceed." Oliver turned on the projector. Detailed charts appeared on the wall. "Let's get straight to the point. Over the past 3 years, more than $340,000 have disappeared from Mr. David's company." He pointed at the red numbers. Unauthorized transactions, fraudulent payments, illegal transfers. David's eyes widened as he turned toward Emily, who was now pale. What? What is this? He stammered. Lies! All lies! Emily shouted. Forensic accountant Paul stood and spoke calmly. Nothing here is fabricated, ma'am. All data was pulled directly from the company's accounting system and cross-checked with bank statements and verified invoices. He clicked to the next slide. Here is a $53,000 transfer to a joint account under the names Emily Montgomery and Ethan Carter. The lover's name hit the room like a gunshot. David jumped to his feet, face drained of color. Ethan? You put his name on your account? David, let me explain. Explain what? I said coldly, as Paul moved to the next slide. Property purchase in Miami. 2-bedroom ocean view apartment. Price, $280,000. The room fell dead silent. David staggered, grabbing the table for balance. His face was ghostly white. You bought a house with him? With my money? Emily was cornered, her eyes darting for an escape that didn't exist. And there's more, I said, my voice slicing through the air like a blade. Oliver changed to the next slide. Photos of my grandchildren appeared, Peter sitting alone outside the school gate, Alice's sunburned arm. Records of missed school days, skipped meals. While you were busy with your lover and stealing money, I said slowly, your children were being neglected. The therapist present opened a file. I contacted the school. The principal is deeply concerned. Peter shows signs of aggression, and Alice has regressed developmentally. David broke down, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know, God, I didn't know. Because you never looked, I shouted, losing control for the first time. You were too busy being her slave to see she was destroying everything, your company, your children, and your mother. Emily shot up, pointing at me. You're just a bitter old woman. You're doing this because you can't stand that your son has his own life. His own life? I stood too. You call betrayal, fraud, and child neglect a life? You're a liar, a thief, and a terrible mother. Enough! Oliver slammed his hand on the table. Both of you, sit down. I took a deep breath and regained my composure. Emily stayed standing, trembling with rage. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered, Sit down. You're making this worse. She sat, her eyes stabbing daggers at me. Oliver opened the final folder. David, now it's your turn. He placed a document in front of my son. Your company owes $520,000. Those debts have been acquired by Mr. Henry Montgomery through intermediaries. He has the legal right to file bankruptcy proceedings at any time. David looked at Henry, then at me, disbelief in his eyes. Oliver continued, However, there's an offer. Your mother is willing to erase the entire debt if you agree to 3 conditions. I slid the contract toward my son. David read aloud, his voice trembling. Immediately divorce Emily, attend family therapy for at least 1 year, and repay the $1,680,000 taken from my father's assets in 10 years, interest-free. The room was silent. I looked straight into his eyes. If you agree, I'll help you rebuild your life. The company can recover. You can reclaim your place as a father, something those 2 children desperately need. And if I refuse? He whispered. If you refuse, I said firmly, I'll end it all. Emily will be prosecuted for fraud and embezzlement. You'll go bankrupt. And I'll fight for full custody of Peter and Alice because both of you have proven yourselves unfit to be parents. Emily screamed. Don't sign it, don't you? Dare, David. She's just bluffing. Oliver slid another set of papers toward her. This is the official complaint already filed. Charges, fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. The documents will be sent to the court this morning. Emily's face went pale. David looked at the paper, then at me, and finally back at her. David, don't do this, Emily pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Think about the kids, about our family. Family? David turned to her, his voice low but firm. You destroyed this family. You stole my company, betrayed me, used my mother's money to buy a house with your lover, and now you dare to talk about family?" He picked up the pen and signed. Emily screamed, cursed, and tried to grab the papers from his hand. But a building security held her back. "Coward! Traitor! You'll regret this!" David looked at her, his voice trembling but steady. "I've already regretted it. Regretted wasting 13 years before seeing who you really are." Emily was escorted out of the room, still yelling. When the door finally closed, silence filled the space. David collapsed into his chair, buried his face in his hands, and sobbed uncontrollably. I walked over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "Now we start over. From nothing, together." He hugged me, and we cried, because some things, though broken, can still be mended. But the story wasn't over yet. There was still one final thing, the most important of all. 6 months may sound short, but when you're rebuilding a life from ashes, each day feels like a year. Now, I sit on the balcony of my apartment, sipping my morning coffee. The September sunlight streams through the window, warm against my skin. Below, New York is waking up traffic, horns, the rhythm of life. Up here, I finally have peace. So much has changed. Emily is serving 200 hours of community service, cleaning a public children's center. She's lost everything. The oceanfront apartment was auctioned off to pay debts. Her lover Ethan disappeared the moment the money ran out. It's funny how people like that always vanish quickly when their pockets are empty. She still tries to call the kids. Sometimes Peter answers, polite but distant. Alice still cries after every call, but the therapist says time will heal. As for David, my son now lives in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, modest but tidy and bright. He works for a logistics company, no longer the owner, no longer the boss, just an employee. Last week he told me, "Mom, for the first time in years, I sleep well. No debts, no lies, and no poisonous voice whispering in my ear anymore." He has shared custody now. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the kids stay with him, and every Saturday, they visit me. Today is Saturday. I look at the clock, 9:15. My heart beats faster. Every time feels just as emotional as the first. The doorbell rings. I open the door. "Grandma." Alice runs into my arms, her hair longer, 2 front teeth missing. Peter follows, 8 years old, trying to act grown-up but still hugging me tight. "Grandma, we brought all the ingredients to bake. Dad let us pick everything at the store." David stands at the door, holding 2 big bags. He looks healthier, with light in his eyes. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, son." Henry steps out from the kitchen, holding a dish towel. "Well, are we ready to make the best chocolate cake in America, my little chefs?" The kids cheer and rush to the kitchen. The kitchen turns into a sweet battlefield, flour everywhere. Alice's hands covered in chocolate, Peter focused on cracking eggs like a scientist. David stands next to me, whisking the batter silently. After a while, he says softly, "Mom, thank you." "For what?" I ask. "For not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I place my hand over his. "You're my son. I can be angry, I can hurt, but I'll never abandon you. I can step back, but I'll never turn away." He quickly wipes away a tear. Therapy helped me see that I'd been emotionally abused for years. She controlled every part of me. I'm not saying that to excuse what I did, but now I understand why I was so blind. "And now?" I ask. He smiles, a genuine smile I hadn't seen in so long. "Now I feel free. As if I'm alive again." The cake finishes baking, and the scent of chocolate fills the house. Alice shouts from the living room, "Grandma, is it ready?" 10 more minutes, sweetheart." We cut the cake and sit around the table. Peter talks about school. Alice proudly shows me her drawing a family. Grandma, Dad, the 2 kids, and Henry, all holding hands. "Where's your mom?" David asks quietly. "She's on another page," Alice answers innocently, "because she lives far away now." Children have their own way of understanding things, simple yet profound. Henry looks at me from across the table, smiling. I return his warm gaze. When everyone leaves and David takes the kids to the park, Henry and I sit again on the balcony. He takes my hand. "Catherine, you did it. You rebuilt everything." "We did it," I say. "I couldn't have done it alone." "You could," he laughs. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known." I rest my head on his shoulder, watching the sun paint the city in gold. "You know what I've learned from all this?" I ask softly. "What's that?" he says. "That we don't have to settle for broken pieces, that self-respect isn't for sale, and even when life shatters us into 1,000 fragments, we can still piece ourselves back together." I turn to him. "And when we rebuild ourselves with our own hands, we never return to what we were. So what do we become?" Henry asks. I smile. "We become diamonds. They thought they could break me, but they didn't know I've been shattered and reborn too many times to learn how to become a diamond. And diamonds, you see, don't break. They only shine." Looking back now, I realize that sometimes our greatest losses are the moments that teach us what love truly means. Family isn't always perfect, but real love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing peace over resentment. I once thought I had lost everything, but in that loss, I found what mattered most: love, self-respect, and the true meaning of home. And what about you? If you had to choose between forgiveness and letting go, which would you choose? Share your thoughts below, because I believe every story we tell can help someone out there find their own light. And if you'd like to stay with me on this journey, where stories of family, courage, and rebirth are told straight from the heart, don't go anywhere, because there's still so much beauty waiting ahead.